Collectors know the value and importance of the special edition stamps released to commemorate a person, event or place. This presentation features those who stood up to the Nazis and are remembered forever on postage stamps. Nicholas Winton was a British banker and humanitarian who established an organisation to rescue children at risk from the Nazis. Born to German Jewish parents who had come to Britain at the beginning of the 20th century, Winton supervised the rescue of 669 children, most of them Jewish, from Czechoslovakia on the eve of World War II. Winton found homes for the children and arranged for their safe passage to Britain, an operation later known as the Czech Kindertransport. His work went unnoticed by the world for nearly 50 years until 1988, when he was invited onto a BBC television programme and was surprised to find that most of the audience were children he had saved. The British press dubbed him the British Schindler, and in 2003 Winton was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II for services to humanity in saving Jewish children from Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia. He died in 2015 at the age of 106. One of the best-known critics of the Nazis was Clemens August von Galen, Bishop of Münster. In a sermon on August 3, 1941, he protested publicly against the so-called T4 euthanasia program, quoting Article 211 of the German Penal Code. Whoever kills a man of deliberate intent is guilty of murder and punishable with death. The killing of the disabled at the hands of the state prompted Galen to report the matter to state prosecutors. Galen's influence made him a considerable security risk for the Nazi regime, which sought to shut him down but was afraid of public unrest. General outrage over the program and the protests of church representatives prompted Hitler to suspend the T4 action, although the murder of patients continued on a decentralized basis. The Red Orchestra was the name given by the Gestapo to anti-Nazi resistance workers during World War II. In the Gestapo's terms, a spy hitting Morse codes was a pianist, a group of pianists formed an orchestra, and as communists they were red. In reality, it was a loose network of resistance circles who printed and distributed illegal leaflets, posters and stickers, hoping to incite civil disobedience. People like Wisconsin native Mildred Fish and her German husband Arvid Harnack, who sent intelligence to the Soviet Union and the United States and dispensed anti-Nazi propaganda. In 1940-41, the group was in contact with Soviet agents trying to thwart the forthcoming German attack upon the Soviet Union, and in 1941, Harnack sent them information about Operation Barbarossa. In July 1942, the Nazi High Command managed to decode the group's radio messages, and on the 7th of September, Arvid and Mildred were arrested. Arvid was tried by the Reich Military Tribunal and executed on the 22nd of December at Plötzensee prison in Berlin. Mildred was given 6 years in prison, but Hitler refused to endorse the sentence and ordered a new trial, which ended with a sentence of death. She was beheaded on the 16th of February 1943, the only American woman executed on the orders of Adolf Hitler. Adam Kuckhoff was a German writer, journalist, and also a member of the Red Orchestra. He and his wife Grete were involved with Arvid and Mildred Harnack, and in June 1941 the Kuckhoffs safeguarded a radio transmitter for their resistance group. Following the arrests of Harnack and many other members of the organisation, Adam too was arrested in Prague on the 12th of September 1942 and executed at Plötzensee prison on the 5th of August 1943. Grete was sentenced to 10 years in a penitentiary and liberated from Waldheim prison by the Red Army in May 1945. A lieutenant in the Luftwaffe when the Harnacks met him, Harro Schulze-Boysen, had been nearly beaten to death by the SA in 1933 and survived, determined to fight the Nazis. He married Libertas Haas-Hay in 1936 and started to gather a circle of resistors. Libertas wrote film criticism for the Essen newspaper and, using the cover of her work, collected evidence on Nazi war crimes that were being perpetrated on the Eastern Front. In 1941, Harnack and Schulze-Boysen informed the Soviets about the Nazis' plans for an attack on the Soviet Union, and after June the 22nd, 1941, Schulze-Boysen recruited new members to the resistance and was involved in writing leaflets and in a fly-posting action. The Gestapo discovered Schulze-Boysen's name in a decoded telegram and arrested him on August 31st, 1942. Libertas warned their friends, but she was arrested attempting to leave Berlin by train on September 8, 1942. Both were tried for the preparation of high treason, demoralization of the armed forces, and giving aid and comfort to the enemy. Harro was hanged and Libertas executed by guillotine on December 22, 1942, in Plötzensee prison. The Communist Party of Germany was particularly active in 1943, and Saefkow-Jacob-Bästlein was one of the largest groups in the German resistance against the Nazi regime, with its hub in Berlin. A meeting planned for July 4, 1944 to discuss concrete measures was betrayed by an informer, and when Jacob and Saefkow arrived, the Gestapo arrested them all. Bästlein had already been arrested in May. All three were sentenced to death at the People's Court on September 5, 1944, and executed 2 weeks later at Brandenburg-Gordon prison. From 1942, Kurt Schlosser was a cabinet maker, climber, and leading member of the Communist Party in Dresden. From 1943, he'd been active with other mountain climbers in illegal border work, and his cabinet-making workshop became a meeting place for fighters against the Nazi regime. In December 1943, Kurt and other active anti-fascists were arrested, and on the 30th of June 1944, he was sentenced to death at the People's Court for high treason and favouring the enemy. On the 16th of August 1944, he was beheaded in the courtyard of the Dresden State Court. Claus von Stauffenberg was a German army officer who took part in the attack on Poland, the German invasion of the Soviet Union, and the Tunisian campaign during the Second World War. Stauffenberg was also one of the leading members of the failed 20th of July plot of 1944 to assassinate Adolf Hitler. For his involvement, he was executed by a firing squad shortly after the failed attempt known as Operation Valkyrie. Jozef Gabčík and Jan Kubiš were part of the team of Czechoslovak British-trained paratroopers sent to eliminate Heydrich in 1942 as part of Operation Anthropoid. They were airlifted along with 7 soldiers into Czechoslovakia on the 28th of December 1941. In Prague, they contacted several families and anti-Nazi organizations that helped them prepare for the assassination. During the attack, Gabčík tried to shoot Heydrich, but his Sten gun jammed, and Kubiš threw a modified anti-tank grenade at his car that mortally wounded him. Giovanni Palatucci has been called the Italian Schindler, credited with saving 5,000 Jews in 1943 while he was police chief in Fiume on the Adriatic. Palatucci was said to have destroyed records to prevent the Germans sending Fiume's Jews to concentration camps, and his death at age 35 in a camp at Dachau seemed to corroborate his valour. Pope John Paul II declared him a martyr, but at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, the tale of his exploits has been removed after new evidence suggested that, far from being a hero, he was an enthusiastic Nazi collaborator involved in the deportation of Jews to Auschwitz. Jan Karski was a Polish resistance fighter soldier. Between 1940 and 1943, Karski reported to the Polish government in exile and Poland's Western allies about conditions in the Warsaw Ghetto and about Germany's extermination camps on Polish soil that were murdering Jews, Poles, and other nationalities. In late 1942, Karski had been smuggled in and out of the Warsaw Ghetto and a transit camp at Ibiza, where he saw for himself the horrors suffered by Jews, including mass starvation and transports en route to the Belzec killing centre. He described what he had seen, and in July 1943 journeyed to Washington and met with American President Franklin D. Roosevelt to plead for action. But with Allied governments focused on the military defeat of Germany, his message received minor attention and failed to result in direct action. In 1983, Israel issued this 3-connected stamp set to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the Vilna and Warsaw Ghetto uprisings. It shows 2 of the leaders, Yosef Glazman in Vilna and Mordecai Anielewicz in Warsaw. During the Soviet occupation of Lithuania, Jozef Glazman was active in the underground and from November 1941 served as deputy chief of the Vilna Jewish Ghetto Police. In January 1942, he helped form FPO, a militarized underground resistance group against the Germans, and he became the deputy commander. Glazman's relationship with the head of the Vilna Ghetto, Jakob Gens, was difficult. On the 25th of July 1943, Gens attempted to send Glazman to a nearby labour camp, but when he refused to go, he was arrested. The FPO organised a rescue and freed Glazman while he was being escorted out of the ghetto by the police. When, following this, Gens betrayed and surrendered Yitzhak Wittenberg, the leader of the FPO, to the Germans, Glazman led a group of Jewish fighters out of the ghetto to form a partisan band in the nearby Narok forest. The Germans discovered this on the 7th October 1943, and all but one of the group were killed. Mordecai Anielewicz was the leader of ZOB, the Jewish fighting organization that led the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. The Germans had planned to liquidate the ghetto in 3 days, but the Jews held out for nearly a month. Not until May the 8th, 1943, did the Nazis manage to take the ZOB headquarters bunker. Civilians hiding there surrendered, but many of the surviving fighters took their own lives to avoid being captured alive. So died Mordecai Anielewicz, the charismatic young commander of the underground army. Pavel Frenkel was one of the senior commanders of the Jewish Military Union and the Jewish Resistance in the months preceding April 1943. It's probable that Pavel personally commanded one of the companies of armed fighters during the ill-fated Warsaw Ghetto uprising, and according to widespread belief, he was killed in action while defending the headquarters of the Jewish Military Union. Janusz Korczak was the director of an orphanage in Warsaw. When the Germans created the Warsaw Ghetto in 1940, his orphanage was forced to move there. In August 1942, during the Gross Action Warsaw, German soldiers came to collect the 192 orphans and about a dozen staff members to transport them to the Treblinka killing centre. Korczak had been offered sanctuary on the Aryan side by the Polish underground organisation Ghetto, but turned it down repeatedly, saying that he could not abandon his children. The whole orphanage was transported to Treblinka. Korczak marched the children through the ghetto to the Umschlagplatz, boarded the trains with them, and was never heard from again. Oskar Schindler was a German industrialist and a member of the Nazi Party who is credited with saving the lives of 1,200 Jews during the Holocaust by employing them in his factories in occupied Poland and Czechoslovakia. The German stamp reminds us that he who saves one life saves the entire world, and the Republic of Guinea stamp celebrates Liam Neeson's portrayal of Schindler in the film Schindler's List. Archbishop Damaskinos Papandreou was the Archbishop of Athens and all Greece from 1941 until his death. In 1943, the Germans began the persecution of the Jews of Greece and their deportations to Nazi concentration camps. Damaskinos formally protested the actions of the occupational authorities in a famous letter. He published the letter even though the local SS commander threatened to execute him by firing squad. His famous response was, "According to the traditions of the Greek Orthodox Church, our prelates are hanged and not shot. Please respect our traditions." When required by the Nazis to produce a list of citizens to be shot in reprisal for the killing of a German soldier, he gave them a list of Greek bishops with his name at the top. The executions were not carried out. And the churches under his jurisdiction were also ordered quietly to distribute baptismal certificates to Jews fleeing the Nazis, saving thousands of Jews in and around Athens. Primo Levi was an Italian Jewish chemist, partisan, Holocaust survivor and writer. He was the author of several books, novels, collections of short stories, essays and poems. His best-known works include his 1947 If This Is a Man, published as Survival in Auschwitz in the United States, an account of the year he spent as a prisoner in the concentration camp in Nazi-occupied Poland. Elie Wiesel was a Romanian-born American writer, professor, political activist, Nobel laureate, and Holocaust survivor. He authored 57 books, including Night, a work based on his experiences as a Jewish prisoner in the Auschwitz and Buchenwald concentration camps. Wiesel was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1986. Simon Wiesenthal was a Jewish Austrian Holocaust survivor, Nazi hunter and writer. He studied architecture and was living in Lvov at the outbreak of World War II. He survived concentration camps at Janowska, Krakow-Blaszau and Gross-Rosen, a death march to Chemnitz, Buchenwald and Mauthausen-Gusen concentration camps. After the war, Wiesenthal dedicated his life to tracking down and gathering information on fugitive Nazi war criminals so that they could be brought to trial. Angelo Roncalli, later Pope John XXIII, played a pivotal role in saving the lives of thousands of Jews while serving as a papal representative during World War II. In 1943 Hungary, Roncalli informed the German government that the Palestine Jewish Agency had 5,000 immigration certificates available. In 1944, he used various methods to issue baptismal certificates, immigration certificates and visas, many of them forged to Hungarian Jews. In Romania, in February 1944, he was asked to intercede for 55,000 interned Jews. Though Roncalli notified Rome, despite his efforts, only 750 Jewish refugees, 250 of them orphans, were saved when their ship arrived in Palestine. In Slovakia and Bulgaria, he used the Red Cross to save thousands of Slovakian Jews who'd been deported to Bulgaria. In France, he ignored a directive not to return baptized Jewish orphans to their parents. Roncalli was beatified in September 2000 and canonized as a saint by Pope Francis on the 27th of April 2014.